Just a second. Let me confirm that in chat that people see us, have communication and all this stuff, and let's go.
Yeah. I think there is some delay between.
Yeah, that should be delay between translation and what people see. So please expect that. And yeah, I believe we can start. Okay, I have confirmation from chat that people can see us, and I hope they also can hear us. But
well, I would still recommend to wait like a couple of minutes for people to join. Yeah, we can talk about like what is the weather for you guys
in the world.
Well, you are all in different places. You must have different weather conditions. I have -1, and it's snowy and rainy in the same time, like a terrible weather. Yes.
I have the same one, but it's nice. -1, snowing. Actually, I'm a little, I don't know, 600 kilometers from you, or 1,000, something like that. And everything is good. And actually, my son enjoys it so much. Right now, he's somewhere slicing from the sun hill.
It's like already dark for my time zone. It's Central European, and it's totally dark. So it's strange that your kid is somewhere sliding in the dark.
I believe we have just a little bit different opinion about our kids. Right now, my with like aunt, and he's enjoying the all this stuff. Okay. Yeah, I believe we can start. So I see the screen on YouTube channel, and I see Alex. He's smiling.
Okay. So let's start. Welcome to probably first virtual meetup of VictoriaMetrics company. We are not really experienced with that, but we will try our best, and we will really appreciate the feedback from the community. And yeah, we have an agenda for today. This virtual meetup will consist of multiple presentations. There will be Alex talking about all the features that he added and VictoriaMetrics team added in 2022. Also, I will cover our future plans for 2023. There will be Managed VictoriaMetrics talk, where guys will explain more about the product. And in the end, we will have this Ask Me Anything session, where we will be happy to answer any questions people have. Feel free to leave the comments on the YouTube translation. We will try reading them and answering as fast as possible. Yeah, feel free to put these questions during the slides, during the talks, and by the end of each slide, we'll check the chat and answer the questions. Okay, so welcome everyone once again, and let's start with how we spent this year, 2022, how VictoriaMetrics team spent this year. So during this year, we and community, of course, you people, we altogether created like 650 issues, even more. That's a big number, and also a pretty similar number of pull requests. Yeah, it's about 600 of pull requests. That's also huge because all of them need to be reviewed. Yeah, and I also excluded Dependabot pull request from it. So with Dependabot, it's like 900 or something like that PRs. Yeah, in total, VictoriaMetrics repo, the main repo, has like 190 contributors. That's also like a lot of people who enjoying the product and trying to help us to make it even better. Thank you guys for doing that. Also, in this year we did 31 release, and that's like the version change is from 172 to 185. Yes, 31 release includes also minor releases, but again, if you run in like something older than 172, it's a moment to think to update your VictoriaMetrics. These 31 releases, they contain like 300 features and 200 bug fixes. So we have more features and bug fixes. That's also great. Okay, what else? VictoriaMetrics team expanded a bit. We got 3 new people. Probably you noticed these people doing a lot of work on the GitHub repo and also answering questions in the Telegram, in the Slack, helping other people to solve their issues. And we welcome Yuri Molodov, who is helping us with the front-end tasks. We are welcoming Dmitry, who are helping with both front-end and back-end, and Zahar, who is also doing like everything, probably except the front-end, but I'm not aware. Zahar is doing a lot of work that I don't have time to catch up even with everything he is doing. Okay, what else? This year, our CTO, Alex, gave a talk at the Open Source Mentoring Conference about scaling to 100 million metrics per second. That was a huge benchmark that he did. So he scaled VictoriaMetrics cluster to push like 100 million metrics samples per second. And yeah, you can find the slides and video published on the internet. Also, we have on our docs.victoriametrics.com, we have this articles page, which also contains all the links to third-party articles, our own articles, our benchmarks. So yeah, if you want to know more about real usage experience of VictoriaMetrics, check this page. It contains a lot of info. Okay, what else? I participated in Altinity conference called OSACon, and I was talking about specifics of data analysis for time series databases. You also can check it somewhere. I hope it was okay, especially for new people who come to VictoriaMetrics think or Prometheus think from other databases like MySQL or Postgres, and they're trying to learn how to work with time series, and this talk specifically for such people. Okay, what else? Alex also gave a talk about the cost of scale on the Paris meetup. It's also there is a recording on the internet, so feel free to check it. It's also really nice. It explains how costly could be the infinite scaling of the relational data of the databases, of the distributed systems. Yeah, good talk. Thanks, Alex. Also, VictoriaMetrics team participated in North America KubeCon this year. We had a booth. We had a lot of people who came to say hi, and we really appreciate that. And also, we would like to announce that we will also participate in Europe KubeCon in April. So yeah, we will be really glad to see everyone from community. So visit KubeCon, come to say hi. Okay, what else? We also noticed a lot of good articles about VictoriaMetrics on the internet, about other companies or organizations using VictoriaMetrics to solve their tasks. For example, like CERN was using VictoriaMetrics. Also, Open Cosmos was using VictoriaMetrics for actually launching VictoriaMetrics product on the satellites on the orbit. That was yeah, really crazy thing. I encourage everyone to read those articles, and yeah, that's cool thing to see that your product is used so widely. That's cool. Okay, what else? Also, we're trying to publish publish more educational information in our observability blog. Yeah, so if you wasn't aware that we have one, please be. We try to put good information there. So yeah, just check if you missed that, and we have a lot of good articles there. Yeah, and feel free to follow us everywhere on our website. We also have Twitter account, LinkedIn account. We have subreddit of VictoriaMetrics, and also join our Slack or Telegram, where we have the most of conversation with our community. Okay, so that was the welcome slides, and according to agenda, the next presentation will be by our CTO, Aliaksandr, and he will be talking about feature highlights.
Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, let me share my screen. It's pretty complex setup. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then let's start. I will describe the most prominent new features which has been appeared in VictoriaMetrics in this year. And we will start with features which have been added to MetricSQL, this query language which is used by VictoriaMetrics, which is Prometheus query language-like language. In this year, we added the add modifier to MetricSQL. This modifier was supported by Prometheus, and we decided that it would be great to add this modifier to VictoriaMetrics and extend its functionality. This modifier allows to query sample at the given timestamp for some time series. You can do it with the syntax. You write metric name with possible filters, put this add mark, and write timestamp in seconds, and you will get the sample value, the closest sample value around this timestamp. Instead of timestamp, you can write special functions such as start or end. For instance, if you write m and end, then you get the time series value at the end of the displayed graph. If you write m at start, then you get the first points on the graph. And VictoriaMetrics extends this functionality compared to Prometheus. You can write additional expressions instead of start and end. For instance, you can write m at start plus 1 hour to get time series values at the 1 hour after the start of the graph. Also, additional extension is that this add operator can be added at any place in the query in VictoriaMetrics, because Prometheus doesn't allow this. Prometheus allows using add operator only after the metric selector. This means that this query will not work in Prometheus, but it works in VictoriaMetrics. The next interesting feature which has been added to MetricSQL is the keep metric names modifier. If you know, most of functions which are used in MetricSQL and PromQL remove metric names and leave only labels from the input time series. And sometimes you need to retain these metric names. For instance, if you write rate over such filter, which should return rate for HTTP requests total and HTTP errors total, this function will return error in Prometheus, and also it will return error in VictoriaMetrics. But in VictoriaMetrics, you can fix this by adding keep metric names modifier after this function, after calling this function. In this case, metric names are preserved, and you get what you want from this query. And this modifier works can be applied to any metric scale function. The next important feature is advanced label filters propagation. What does it mean? If you look at this query, it just sums two rates, and in the first rate you specify additional filter on the job label, and in the second rate you forgot specifying this filter. In this case, Prometheus and VictoriaMetrics previously spent additional CPU time and additional resources, CPU, memory, and disk I/O for selecting all the time series with HTTP errors total name, and after that it just drops time series which have no this job A label in this time series. So it just spends additional time, CPU time, additional resources which are useless. And VictoriaMetrics added a special optimization for this case, which is performed before actual query execution. It just propagates such labels, such as the job A label, into all the filters used in the query. So it automatically translates this query to this one and then executes it. And this allows reducing the amount of useless work for the second part of the query, as I described before. And this advanced label filters propagation works on pretty complex cases. Let's look at the second case, which just select one time series with one set of filters and divides this by another time series using instance label as the matching label. And VictoriaMetrics also can optimize this query, and it translates it to this query. It propagates instance filters on instance label into another part of the query, and this also allows reducing the amount of useless work during query execution. You can read more about this type of optimizations in this article. The advanced filters, label filters propagation also has some magic. Even if you don't specify any label filters in the query, VictoriaMetrics still can optimize this query. How it does optimize it? For instance, it notifies that you perform this multiply operation on the matching label instance. In this case, it performs the first part of the query. It executes this queue and locates all the unique instance labels which this queue returns, and then automatically propagates it to the right part of the query. In this case, it just adds the instance regex filter here, and then executes the right part of the query. And this also allows reducing amounts of CPU time spent on useless work. The next interesting feature is that metric scale now supports short numeric constants. You can write everywhere in the query, use kilobytes, megabytes, and gigabytes, or G, M, Q suffixes, and they automatically translated to the corresponding values. This is mostly usability feature, which allows running writing some more simpler query and more understandable queries. For instance, this query calculates network transfer rate in megabytes per second. You don't need to write 1 million constant here. You can write just 1 MB, and it automatically translates to 1 million. The same applies to gigabytes, and if you write I letter between G and B, then this translates to gigabits, gigabytes. The difference between gigabytes and gigabytes is that gigabytes uses 1000 multiplier, and gigabytes uses 1024 multiplier. And if you measure, for instance, if you measure network transfers, then it is common to use 1000 multiplier. And if you measure some disk space or memory space, then it is common to use 1024 multiplier. This is a good addition to already supported duration constants. If you don't know, MetricScale already supports this. You can write such query which calculates the average sample scrape rate over the last hour. You don't need to write 3600 here. You can write just 1 each, and this constant automatically translates to 3600. Yet another feature is this is distributed query tracing. Now you can trace any query in VictoriaMetrics and answer the question why this query is slow, and you can notice which parts of the query is slow and try to optimize them. And this feature also helps in query debugging. You can read more about this feature in this link after we will share this presentation to you. And this query tracing is available in our new UI for VictoriaMetrics. You can just enable query trace in the UI and execute the query and get this trace, and you can investigate it. That's cool. During this year, many new functions have been added to VictoriaMetrics. This is the list of these functions. I think that we can skip this list. You can investigate it later. But this list contains some useful functions which can be used, can be useful for your special use cases. Let's see at the new vmui features. The first feature which has been added in this year is Cardinality Explorer, which allows to determine the source of high cardinality. The high cardinality means that you have a big number of unique time series in this database, and Cardinality Explorer also helps determine the source of high churn rate when old time series are constantly substituted by new time series. You can read the documentation about this Cardinality Explorer by this link, and this is how it looks in vmui, the Cardinality Explorer. You can write filter different. You can analyze stats on cardinality stats on specified label filters. You can limit this label filters. You can. I advise you just switch to this cardinality tab in vmui and play with it, and in order to feel how it works and how it helps determine high cardinality issues. The next feature is top queries tab. This tab always determines the slowest query and queries which take the most of the time for execution. This is how it looks in vmui. Just switch to this tab and look, investigate your the most heavy queries in your system. And overall, vmui has been significantly improved this year compared to the previous year, and it became more usable and more stable. It has less bugs and works much better compared to the state of the vmui in the previous year. Special thanks to our developer who helps with vmui, Yuri. Let's look at the vmagent features, which have been appeared in this year. The first feature is the ability to perform the query on behalf of vmagent. Just click on the link response on the targets page for a particular target, and you get the response from this target, which the vmagent fetches from this target. Sometimes, why this feature can be useful? Sometimes the target vmagent runs in some isolated environment, and from this isolated environment, it can query particular target. But you cannot query this target from your environment. And in this case, this feature helps you debugging such targets. The next feature is the ability to filter targets on this targets page by arbitrary regular expression or label filters. This feature is helpful when you scrape thousands of targets and want investigating particular targets with particular labels or with particular parts in the URL. The next feature is the search discovery page. This search discovery page. You can switch to this page by navigating to targets page and then clicking to discover targets tab. And this page shows the discovered labels per each target and the final labels per each target after applying their labeling. And the most important is that this page shows also targets which have been deleted after the applying relabeling. So you will see an empty set of labels in the target labels for such targets. And this page always debugging such cases, always answering the question why a particular target has been deleted, or why the particular target has been discovered with a particular set of labels. Another feature is target relabel debugging. As you can see on this discover target page, there is a column which named debug relabeling with the link. You can click on this link, and the following page will be opened. This page will show initial targets labels here, and the labeling config which has been applied to this target labels. And the table below shows step-by-step execution of this labeling rules for this target. You can see the input labels for each step and output labels after applying this relabeling rule. And vmagent also highlights added labels with each step in blue and highlights removed labels in each step in red. This allows quickly determining why a particular relabeling config works or works in unexpected way, and this is very useful for relabel debugging for targets and for metrics. The same page exists for metrics debugging. Another feature is the ability to specify full URLs in address label. The previously address label could contain only TCP address with optional port, as in Prometheus. But this usually confuses people who tried using who didn't work with Prometheus before. For instance, they wrote such config, static config, and enumerate targets in full URLs, and then they were asking why this config doesn't work. And in VictoriaMetrics, this config now works. It allows writing both targets the old-fashioned way, like Prometheus accepts, just write hostname plus port. And in this case, the Imagined automatically adds the needed scheme and the needed metric path to this URL. And you also can write the full URLs in targets or in address label with relabeling. And the Imagined also understands this and works as expected. The Imagined also gained support for new service discovery mechanisms. This service discovery for Azure and service discovery for Yandex Cloud. We also published documentation for all the supported service discovery mechanism in Imagined. It is available by this link. You can click and investigate it. Imagined also gained support for multi-tenancy. This means that you can specify special tenant ID labels with relabeling rules, and Imagined automatically will write these samples with this label to a particular tenant. And Imagined also can write multi-tenant data to a single multi-tenant URL, which has been added to at VM insert. You can read about this in this link. Imagined also improved performance in this year. There were some optimizations for memory and CPU when discovering big number of scrape targets. This is especially true for Kubernetes service discovery, when usually thousands of targets are discovered. And Imagined gained additional performance optimizations for this case. And also Imagined gained performance optimizations for non-trivial relabeling rules with complex regular expressions. So if you run Imagined from the previous year, and you'll see that it uses much CPU and memory, it's time to upgrade and see whether it reduces CPU and memory usage. Let's look at the relabeling features which have been added in this year. The first feature is the conditional relabeling. You can specify if filter at every relabeling rule, at any relabeling rule, and this rule will be applied only if the input sample or input target matches this if filter. This is pretty powerful feature which allows customizing your labeling, fine-tuning your labeling rules. The next feature is named label placeholders. You can specify refer label names inside the replacement field. You just write these label names inside double curly braces, and the Imagined and VictoriaMetrics will replace these placeholders with the real values of these labels. And the next feature is graphite style relabeling. As you can know that VictoriaMetrics frequently use it for data ingestion from graphite systems, which ingest graphite style metrics. These metrics usually don't have any labels, but they have long names delimited by dots with different parts in this metric names, like in this case. And now VictoriaMetrics simplifies transforming this graphite style labeling metrics to Prometheus style metrics with labels. This much better syntax and capability compared to the standard Prometheus relabeling rules. And it also works faster than standard Prometheus relabeling rules applied to graphite labels, graphite metrics. So if you ingest graphite metrics into VictoriaMetrics and use old-fashioned Prometheus relabeling to these metrics, then I strongly advise you converting these relabeling rules to graphite relabeling rules, and you gain both better readability for these relabeling rules and better performance. Let's look at the vmAlert features. The first feature is that vmAlert gained better integration with grafana alerts. Now you can specify instruct single node VictoriaMetrics or vmSelect in cluster version to proxy requests from grafana to vmAlert if you specify vmAlert proxy or command line flag. In this case, you can investigate alerts and configs from vmAlert directly from grafana UI. The next feature is additional of reusable templates in vmAlert. You can use it. And the next important feature is that vmAlert now allows debugging your alerting rules via its web interface. And vmAlert also improved compatibility with Prometheus. It gained support for missing template functions, which were provided by Prometheus, and it also improved compatibility with Prometheus alert generator specification. Let's look at the vmCTL features. The first feature is that vmCTL now allows seamless migration of data between clusters of VictoriaMetrics without the need to specify separately tenant IDs per each migration. vmCTL automatically discovers all the tenants in source cluster and migrate all the data from all these tenants to the destination cluster. The next feature is that vmAlert now can migrate data from any system which supports Prometheus remote read protocol. Such systems include Prometheus itself, Tanos, Cortex, and Bemir. And let's look at new enterprise features. The first enterprise feature which has been appeared in this year is support for mutual TLS for communication between cluster components. The next feature is advanced GVT token handling in VM Gateway. You can specify to read the GVT token from any HTTP header now, and also you can verify GVT token signature at VM Gateway side. The next feature is support for automatic restore from backups in VM Backup Manager. And the next feature is the automatic storage discovery at vmSelect and insert. Previously, as you can know, if you use a cluster version of VictoriaMetrics, you need to specify all the addresses of storage nodes via storage node command line flag. And this feature allows you specifying as a DNS SRV record for storage nodes. In this case, select and insert node automatically discover all the storage nodes hidden behind this name. and use this all these storage nodes. It also automatically updates the list of storage nodes when this list changes. It is also possible to specify a file with the list of storage nodes, and insert and select will automatically read this file and use the storage nodes which specified in this file. And if this file changes, then VictoriaMetrics insert and select nodes will automatically update the list and use the updated list. And it is also possible to specify arbitrary HTTP or HTTPS URL with the list of storage nodes. The next feature, enterprise feature, is support for multiple retentions. You can specify arbitrary number of retentions per tenant or per arbitrary set of metrics. You can read more about this feature by these links. And let's look at other enhancements which can be attributed to subsystems previously discussed. The first feature is that every VictoriaMetrics component now supports environment variable placeholders in command line flags. For instance, if you write specify some flag with this syntax, then VictoriaMetrics automatically substitutes this env var with the environment variable value when executing, and this works in any shell because this substitution is performed by VictoriaMetrics itself. Actually, it works without any shell. For instance, inside Scratch Docker image. And the use cases for this feature is passing secrets via command line flags. If you don't want to expose your secrets in command line flags, then you can specify this secret in environment variable and explicitly mention this secret via command line flag using this syntax. And the next important use case is that this feature allows explicit configuration by specifying needed command line flags and referring the exact environment variables in these flags. This simplifies debugging comparing to the commonly used implicit configuration via environment flags. As usual, VictoriaMetrics gains performance optimizations for different supported APIs. It also improves performance when replication is enabled in cluster, improves query performance, and it also improves query performance on hosts with many CPU cores, 16 or more CPU cores. If you have so much CPU cores on VM select nodes, then or in a single version of VictoriaMetrics, then it is likely you gain additional performance improvements when you upgrade to newest versions of VictoriaMetrics. We improved deduplication and downsampling handling in this year. The first improvement is that previously VictoriaMetrics left the first sample at every discrete dedup interval, and now it leaves the last sample at every such interval. This aligns better with Prometheus data model and works better overall because in Prometheus data model, when you query some sample at the given timestamp, then Prometheus works the closest sample which is located previously just before this timestamp. And also the deduplication now leaves the biggest value out of multiple samples with the same timestamp. this adds some additional determinism to the duplication, because previously, in this case, VictoriaMetrics just chose a random sample, and this could raise questions from our users why query results change with every refresh of the page. The next interesting feature is that all VictoriaMetrics components now support automatic metrics push to the configured remote storage via push metrics URL command line flag. The use case for this feature is when your VictoriaMetrics components are located in some restricted environments where external scrape isn't possible. Now you can just collect metrics from these components by specifying this push metrics URL command line flag and push metrics to external system, to external VictoriaMetrics. The next feature is now VictoriaMetrics supports push gateway data ingestion format and can be used as drop-in replacement for push gateway. The next feature is multi-tenancy enhancement. Now, VM insert component accepts tenant IDs, such as account ID and project ID via labels during data ingestion, I mean. And another feature is that when backup restore gains support for Azure Blob Storage, you can make backups and restores from Azure Blob Storage. VictoriaMetrics components can official macOS builds for AMD 64 and ARM 64 architectures. And also they gain official builds for FreeBSD and OpenBSD, and all these builds are published at our release pages. And the important feature that VictoriaMetrics can run also on small systems such as Raspberry Pi, for instance, and it gained improved performance in this year for Raspberry Pi. And also it now allows controlling the frequency of data writing to disk with new in-memory data flush interval command line flag. And this can prolong life for low-end SD cards, which are frequently used in Raspberry Pis, because these SD cards usually have a low number of write cycles. And if you use all these write cycles, then this SD card becomes broken. And this year, we started providing long-time support releases. The first long-time support release for VictoriaMetrics is 1.79. These releases contain only new bug fixes and don't contain new features. We decided to support long-time releases for 1 year and provide new releases based on new long-time support releases based on new usual releases every 6 months. The full list of new features is available at the changelog. You can investigate it. And now you can ask any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alex, for presentation.
It was long. Yeah, sorry. So.
Well, you made a lot of features. Your fault. Okay, we had a couple of questions in the chat. So Grigory Rochev asks, I have some teams who make a lot of requests at the same time, which is why the storage gives a very large amount of data, and I just can't find who does it and for what requests. So Grigory asks if this active queries tab in vmui could help him to identify who is abusing the system.
the active tab, active queries tab in vmui will definitely show you the queries which take the most time or most CPU or which are executed most frequently. But this tab don't show the source of these queries. So if you can determine the source of the query by the query itself, then this tab will help you. But in another way, it will not help right now. But I think that we can think how we can provide this information, the source of the most frequently executed and the most heavy queries on this tab.
Yeah, I would also add that we have a feature request to add some kind of audit stuff on VMOs or VM selects. I don't know where, we didn't decide yet, which would should have additional logging or maybe additional statistics for each served query. So we have this feature request, but we didn't plan time for that. But yeah, probably at some point of time we will add this feature. Also, you can make some type of workaround. You can have a dedicated VM select for each team in your organization, and probably you can put different limitations on those VM selects. For example, log slow duration to 1 second or something like that, if you want to get all the queries made by that team logged. And those logs will show you the time spent during serving the query. So then you can analyze those logs and understand which of those queries were the most expensive ones. I would also would like to share that this vmui thing, we have a playground actually in our documentation. So everyone who wants to check how it works, you can just visit this link, and it already contains the most up-to-date version of vmui with all the features that Alex mentioned. So, and you can run some specific queries here. You can check how tracing works here. Yeah, you can do a variety of things, like, for example, try our sticky tooltips. You can also check Cardinality Explorer here. You can check the top queries page here. And yeah, feel free to investigate. Okay. Checking the questions again. Dmitry Tigro asks, in a result of the duplication, what value will remain, last or maximal?
The answer is that the last value remains with the biggest timestamp at the given deduplication interval. But if you have multiple values with the same timestamp with millisecond precision, then the maximum value out of these samples will remain now.
Okay, cool. And also, Yegor Pronin asks, if there are any technical limits for amount of metrics per one VictoriaMetrics cluster, or it depends only on hardware? I mean, depends only on the amount of resources.
So, I would recommend you looking at my presentation, which Roman mentioned, how we scaled VictoriaMetrics cluster to handling 100 million samples per second. This cluster handled 1 billion of active time series, actually, and there is, of course, the physical limitation for the cluster size and for cluster capabilities, capacity. And the main physical limitation, I think, that is network, because all the cluster components communicate over network, and if the network is saturated, then you cannot overcome this. But until network isn't saturated, you can just add more nodes to the cluster and give more and get more performance and more capacity from the cluster.
Okay, thank you. I see there are more questions. They're not actually related to this specific talk. So I will save them, and we will go through such questions in the AMA session, which will be after all the presentations. So we didn't break the schedule. Okay. So next, thank you, Alex. And next presentation is by me, and it will be about VictoriaMetrics Roadmap. So what we plan to do in 2023. Okay, so the first thing, everyone see my screen? No?
Well, we can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Because I have, I have delay of that. Okay, the first thing we would like to deliver in 2023 is the plugin, Grafana data source plugin for VictoriaMetrics. It is actually already there on the GitHub. It's not like a final version. We are still working on it, and we're still working on the submitting it to the grafana.com plugin repository, so it will become official. But so far, you can already test it. You can find it in the VictoriaMetrics organization by the name Grafana data source. So why we do it? Well, basically because there are some limitations in the current Prometheus data source plugin that we recommend to use and recommended to use for everyone. One of the limitations is that the new version of the plugin started to validate metric names, and potentially it will start to validate function names on the Grafana side before sending actually queries to the data source. And this breaks experience for people who are using metric names not compatible with Prometheus. So for example, people who migrate from Graphite or Influx, and they have like specific metric names with chars not allowed in Prometheus model, but are allowed in VictoriaMetrics, because VictoriaMetrics supports multiple ingestion protocols and is suitable for migrating from many other systems. So VictoriaMetrics allows to have, for example, dots in metric names. But because of this Prometheus modification of the plugin, those users can't execute the queries as they used to, because Grafana now rejects those queries. It didn't even send them to data source. So one of the solutions how we can overcome this is to introduce our own plugin, VictoriaMetrics data source, which would have some additional features and no limitations for metric names validation. Also, we can deliver even more cool things to the data source plugin. For example, we can add metric SQL support to it. So far, we already this plugin version already has all the metrics QL functions added to the dictionary with descriptions of what each function does. And we also plan to add even more features like support with templates, tracing. Maybe you can just visit the repository, check the issues, and yeah, maybe try using it. Okay, who is actually working on the Grafana data source plugin? That's Yuri and Dmitry. Yuri is doing front-end work, Dmitry is doing back-end work. So yeah, for those who didn't know, Grafana plugins also has backend, and this backend is responsible for alerting. So when you configure in Grafana some alerts over the panels, Grafana will actually try to execute those alerts on the Grafana backend module, which is written in Go. So Dmitry is working on the backend version of the plugin for alerting support. It is already done. Yeah, so feel free to try it. Okay, what else? OpenTelemetry support. We already have the pull request made by Nikolai, and there are some things, there are some limitations why we didn't merge it yet. But yeah, let's answer the first three questions. Why we want to have it? Well, because OpenTelemetry support becomes like a standard in industry, and many many users want just like a common general way to push metrics and to use that format of metrics, which will be supported not only by like Prometheus, but by many other time series databases or solutions. And VictoriaMetrics should support it as well. Yeah, because we don't want people to try to find any workarounds. We just want it to work seamlessly. And OpenTelemetry supports seems good thing to do. But there is a thing why we didn't do it. On the screenshot, you don't see it, but actually adding all the libraries which are needed for OpenTelemetry parser increases the binary size of VictoriaMetrics by 10 or 15 megabytes. I don't remember, but it's actually like a 30 or 40% of the total binary size of the VictoriaMetrics itself. So that's a bummer, and we're trying to minimize the impact of adding the support of the OpenTelemetry parser. So that's why it takes so long. Okay, what's next? Next is streaming aggregation, or how people call it, aggregation on the edge, or edge computing. So what it actually does, it will allow us to do some computations on the VM agent side before sending data to VictoriaMetrics. What this gives us, this helps us to actually reduce the load on the time series database itself, because now you can control you can control amount of data you send. For example, you can send data once per 5 minutes and send only aggregates. You also get a better resource isolation because now you can move some part of the things that some part of computational load, which is done by recording rules, for example, you can move that to VM agent. And VM agent will calculate, for example, average, max, mean, and some other aggregation functions, and reduce the pressure on the time series database. It also will help you to do like a smart downsampling with like more conditions and more functions, not just leaving a one data point per interval. And also moving this computation to VM agent side to the edge helps to split the configuration per client. So for example, we have VM agent per team, and each team will have their own aggregation logic on the VM agent. You don't need to maintain one big like configuration file to aggregate a lot of different metrics. And it also supposed to work really well with retention filter thing, which Alex mentioned before. So what it would look like, that's like what I imagine how it would look like. So for example, on VM agent, you configure this aggregation by capturing 5 minutes and 30 minutes aggregates of the node CPU metrics, for example. And then VM agent will just send these aggregates to the VictoriaMetrics 5 minutes and 30 minutes buckets. And on VictoriaMetrics, you can then configure retention filters and say that 5 minutes aggregates you want to store only for 10 days, and 30 minutes aggregates you will store in for 90 days, or any different retention policy you would look like. This sounds really cool. We didn't decide yet who will be working on it, but it seems really feasible to achieve. Yeah, and we hope it will be delivered soon, and will help many people to overcome like big challenges in the monitoring. Because one of the challenges so far for any time series database is the cardinality limit, because all the time series databases are vulnerable to this cardinality thing. And current version of downsampling in VictoriaMetrics doesn't help with cardinality, because it doesn't reduce the amount of time series in the database. It just reduces number of data points, right? And this aggregation on the edge, or streaming aggregation, supposed to help with that. So imagine, for example, you have one big instance with 64 cores. And you install the node exporter on this instance, and node exporter exposes the metric for each CPU core for it. So you have at least 64 metrics only for CPU cores, but you actually don't want this data, right? So you create an aggregate on the VM agent, which will just calculate the average load, accumulative load, and you send just that. And instead of 64 time series, you will have 1. And that's only this time series will be saved in the VictoriaMetrics database. So yeah, it's supposed to help with cardinality issues. Okay, what else? VM alert. So we had this feature from 2020, like a request to have a user interface in VM alert for controlling, for creating, deleting, modifying alerting rules, and we still don't have it. But why people ask for it? Because UI is more simple for many people, especially for people who are already using Grafana and get used to Grafana's alerting mechanism. And yeah, we have a lot of users who ask for that feature. Also, user interface opens more additional features comparing to the way how we manage alerts right now via the YAML file. So UI can help you to test rules before submitting it. UI could help you to validate and preview how alert itself will look like. You also can have the change history, or maybe some control or visibility of alerts, anything. So UI can be pretty powerful. And so far, we are considering to supporting the Grafana alerting. We currently already have this integration with VM alert in Grafana, which helps to check the existing loaded rules to VM alert through Grafana. So when you open alerting, you can see the VM alert alerts loaded. But Grafana also has this managed alerting rules and recording rules. So far, only one data source support that, and that's Mimir. And we are considering maybe supporting this API as well in VM alert. Yeah, who will be working on that? That would be me, Dmitry, and Yuri. Yeah, so stay tuned. We will be trying to focus on that on the beginning of the year. Okay, what else? The another cool thing which we think would be really beneficial for VM alert, that's hysteresis support. What it is, it's when you can define like a threshold when alert will turn into firing, and then you can have a different threshold when alert will become non-active again. And these thresholds can be different. So for example, you get the firing alert when temperature is more than 80 degrees, but you want to turn it off only when it's lower than 70 degrees. Yeah. Seems pretty nice feature. I was thinking how it could look like, and so far we will try to implement this way of the hysteresis support. So in alerting rule, you will get the directive called thresholds, and you will be able to define at which threshold alerting rule enters into firing or non-active state. Yeah, I hope we will add it soon as well. Yeah, who will be working on this? That would be me and Dmitry. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ping us. Okay, vmui Explore tab. So that's a cool feature, which probably was highlighted on the previous, I don't know, KubeCon. I don't remember exactly the conference, but actually, what this feature does is it helps to simplify metrics exploration. So imagine that you have a job called like my cool service, and you don't know what metrics are in this job my cool service. So far, what you can do, you can go to Grafana Explorer or to vmui and get all the metrics with job my cool service. But what if we can simplify the thing? What if we can plot all the panels based on the type of metrics without asking you to do this on your own? So this is what Explore tab looks like. You just enter the job name, and it plots you all the graphs on the page, and you can just click on them and look immediately. It not only helps you to explore the metrics this service has, but also to find any correlations between metrics. Because if something happens to my cool service and you don't have a special dashboard for it or alerting rules for it, you just go to this Explore tab and then click on the metric names that you think are important, and just to see what happened during the incident. There is already opened pull request by Yuri. Yeah, so feel free to try and test it. I hope it will be merged by the end of the year. Okay, what else? And the big announcement is Victoria Logs. So that's also an issue from 2020. And people were asking for support of the logs for a long time. And logs is like one of the pillars of observability. We think that metrics are the most important thing so far, and logs are after metrics. And making VictoriaMetrics or providing a solution from VictoriaMetrics company, from VictoriaMetrics product for supporting logs would be like a killing feature that we think that we should pursue that. And Victoria Logs will be as performant and as reliable as our solution for metrics is. Yeah, and we hope you guys will like it. Who will be doing that? Our CTO, Alex, will be working on this, and yeah, probably you can ask him on the ALMA session about something specific about Victoria Logs. Okay, so that was the roadmap. I want just to remind that the map is not the territory. So you see, we had a roadmap before, and we tried to stick to it as much as possible, but still not all the points from the previous roadmap were completed. Just because everything changes really fast, and we need to be flexible as well. So I strongly believe that everything that I mentioned in the roadmap will be done, but still roadmap can change. We can add more features, we can reduce or change something. But yeah, stay tuned and participate in our Slack channels and Telegrams, and I hope we will have more visual meetups where we can discuss technical things in details. Yeah, and that's all about our roadmap. 1 second, I will check the questions during presentation because I was not looking at. Okay, no questions. So no questions. Then the next talk will be about managed VictoriaMetrics, and I believe Artyom or Max.
I will.
So Artyom will cover this. Okay.
Okay, yeah, let me share my screen. If you hear any additional noise, just let me know. And if you see my screen, also let me know. So, do you see my screen?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, perfect. So, I'm Artem, one of co-founders, and going to talk about Managed Victoria. About Managed Victoria, we built Managed VictoriaMetrics. We built it almost like full this year, and there is some ongoing activity. But right now we have a solution that's production ready. Feel free to use it. It's designed to focus on the small, medium, and big workloads like VictoriaMetrics is designing. So what is about? It's managed VictoriaMetrics time-series. We provide all features there. We bring features from open source to manage it when we prove that it's stable and add it one by one. And also there is some additional feature specific to managed solutions. It's mostly linked with security management, user management, and all other stuff. And the key things that's as VictoriaMetrics, it can handle really big setups. It can handle small and medium setups. It's one-button solution like every managed or SaaS services. Definitely secure because we secure it internally, provide security endpoints, and externally, and also it's secured in terms of the user management as well. And I think it costs not so big amount of credits and areas because VictoriaMetrics itself is cost-effective solutions. Where we do that? We do that right now on AWS Cloud in US and EU regions. So feel free to choose well-known regions in drop-down when create deployments, and that's it. Right now we support AWS subscription, so you subscribe via AWS Marketplace and AWS charge you, and also we support the regular bank transfers if you ping us. Next things about the features. As I mentioned before, right now that's time-series database and orchestration around it. VictoriaMetrics Single, VictoriaMetrics Cluster, and also VictoriaMetrics Cluster with HA, which is pretty obvious. Next things, we run enterprise versions there, and that means that you have access to all enterprise features, such as downsampling and retention filters. This is like more popular one, but other things also applicable. Next one, vmui is integrated. That's simple export tab where you can go and explore your queries, and it goes with all features that vmui exposes, like Cardinality, Explorer, top queries, Explorer tab will also be there. The only difference between open source version that is you cannot specify custom URLs there. That's point to specific to your instance, and you have option to choose a tenant if it's a cluster version. Yeah. Next one, secured connection. So we have notion of access tokens, that's bearer tokens. We have all this connection is secured. So LS, you have an option to define as many tokens as you need. And it's read tokens, write tokens, read and write tokens, support bearer token, and basic house. What else? And yeah, of course, that's native integration with what we have in open source. So you have managed version. That means that you have an VictoriaMetrics instance or instances, and you can do whatever you want with this instance. Use VM agent to write, use VM alert to read and alerting things, and like use anomaly detection if you want. So whatever you want is just a regular VictoriaMetrics time-series database that we manage for you. Also, of course, it supports all the protocols, and we run almost the stable version that we decide. I will explain later what it means. And it actually falls into automatic version upgrades and rolling update strategy. So what it means, we run the latest version of VictoriaMetrics Enterprise there when we sure that it's totally 100% stable. We update in, you can specify the maintenance window when we do these upgrades. Usually people choose some night or weekend. And we also, if the cluster, we do rollout updates. And about some internals of cluster, we try to use big amounts of storage nodes there to simplify this process. Non-developer things, so not automation, not machines. We provide support, so the regular support about if you have any like issues, feel free to write them. There is a button to do that. We are going to improve this UX functionality feature. We also send you notifications if something is wrong with your setup, where you can go and check and fix or change engines or upgrade, something like that. We also have internal alerting system, which is obvious. And last but not least, that's SLA, like regular solution. We have SLA. We are going to actually publish it soon. Some internal stuff. That's how we do that. We run VictoriaMetrics like installations per region, per availability zones, and we do it via Kubernetes. So if someone asks you about is it a problem to run VictoriaMetrics in Kubernetes ecosystem, the answer there is no. We run multiple of them into single or multiple Kubernetes clusters. We are using VictoriaMetrics operator for that. How we do that? We heavily rely on Carpenter in terms of the after-scaling of node pools. If you are not familiar with this project, please take a look. It doesn't work good. Like every time you want to have some improvements, but from the existing perspective, it does really good. And what it does is just you have a node pool, and if someone requests resources that is not available in your Kubernetes ecosystem, you just go provision nodes and add these physical nodes to your Kubernetes. We do backups. So for every instance from single and cluster nodes, we do backups. Different, not only one. That's, if I'm not mistaken, daily and monthly. We have a retention period, and if you have any issues, you can request to restore from the backup. Also, we run VMOs for the authentication. These success tokens that I mentioned previously, it's purely VMOs integration. So we just did automation on top of that, and applying configuration, reloading on the fly. VMOs support that. Yeah, and about what we are going to do next. First and main one, we are going to introduce alternative payment providers. As I mentioned today, it's AWS Marketplace or direct transfers. We are going to introduce card payment system, so you have more options to pay. Also, alerting and recording rules. Right now, you can set up alert to read and write data back, but it's nice to have alerting closer to your source. That's why we are going to add VM alert there. That will be also enterprise VM alert that supports multi-tenancy and also routing by tenant. Next things, UI UX redesign. So we're also going to focus to make it better. VictoriaMetrics is an engineering company with a really great understanding how to do backend work. And right now we also must focus on UI and UX development to provide better UI experience. So that's in our plans as well. So other things, that's notification systems, not only internal things, like right now we have notification if something going on with your VictoriaMetrics cluster. We are going to provide more functionality there where you can inform if something is wrong with your data. So basically alerting notification by some alerts. Private links in AWS. We designed the system to support that. We need to add support to that. So That's pretty easy and fairly choice. So that's in our roadmaps. Also, important thing for some of the companies, that's compliance. Right now, company is certified and solution is certified by ISO 27001. We're also going to focus on ESOC compliance. There is like difference between these reports in terms of how usually you achieve them, and currently, like initially, we designed the system to fit these requirements to pass the report. The only one thing that we need to do this report. This definitely may take some time. Yeah. What else? More clouds? That's definitely the option. So right now, that's AWS. We are going to add support of more clouds. Yeah, of course, everything that is VictoriaMetrics roadmaps with some delay. If it's like native support, it's definitely upgrading the version. If it's some orchestration, that will require some time to implement it. Yeah. And if you need something, just let us know. We'll definitely go and evaluate all features that we have, and we definitely rely on the user feedback. For example, some user manager features that we are delivered not so far from today, I believe last month or previous months. We added some feature from our user feedback, and right now you can specify Google SSO only for the login. Yeah, and yeah, that's it. In terms of, I see one question from Grigory about, do you run cluster per client? No, that's big clusters, Kubernetes clusters, where we run multiple clients, but we run installation per client. And there is a mechanism of collocation of resources. We try to achieve, we try to eliminate noisy neighbors problem there. So if your instance feed to some VM instance, that's definitely will locate you here. If there is some collocation, that we try to minimize this collocation as much as possible. Sometimes that's result to over provisioning resource, but we are doing that instead of creating an option of noisy neighbor problems.
Artem, can I add details?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would state clear that we don't run multiple users on the same VictoriaMetrics cluster, because probably the question.
That's what I mentioned. We run installations per client, so there is no you have control of your own installation. So it's like database as a servers instead of pure SaaS, and you provide single tenant to every customer on multiple tenants. Okay, that's it from my side. What else? I believe the next one is Q&A or M&A section, so we can cover all existing questions there. And yeah, Roman, could you please drive it? And in terms of how we are going to do that, actually, everything's up to you, Roman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the talk. So our session is a session where you can ask any question, like any plans of VictoriaMetrics, or maybe some issues bothering you for a long time, or you don't know how to do something with VictoriaMetrics, or not sure if VictoriaMetrics is applicable. Yeah, feel free to ask. We'll try to answer any question you have. I promised to answer one of the questions, which was on the Alex talk. It is by Hor K, and the question is: if I had two VM selects, one big, one small, and the query failed on the small one because of the lack of resources, would it be possible to resend it on the bigger VM select?
I think that It's possible, but you need to write your own logic in front of these VM selects. I think that probably it should be some type of proxy which can send this query to small VM select. If this VM select returns error, then this proxy can resend this query to big VM select and return the response back. But we have no such proxy, but such proxy can be easily written by users.
Yeah, I would just add that currently we're trying to keep VictoriaMetrics component as simple as possible. That's why VM selects do not know about each other, the same way as VM storages do not know about each other. It's called shared nothing architecture. And if one VM select failed for some reason, there is no way for him to reroute this request to another VM select because they just don't know about each other. And also failing because of memory limitations, for example, will lead to process crash. So there will be nothing to reroute after that. Yeah, my recommendation is just to not have different heterogeneous, how it's called, hardware for VM selects. Try to stick to the same type of machines and the same type of resources for your components, or just run VM selects dedicated for specific streams with different query complexity limitations. Yes, Artem?
Yeah, I just wanted to add what you mentioned in the last sentence. That's if you have different purpose of your queries, like alerting queries versus non-things, try to differentiate it using different sets of VM select.
Yeah.
Let me continue the thought of from Artem and try to explain it in more clearly. VictoriaMetrics cluster can contain different sets of every component. This means that it can different sets of VM insert, which with different purposes. For instance, some VM insert can accept data from for long-term storage. Another set of VM insert can accept data for short-term storage, and then route this data to different sets of storage nodes with different retention periods, for instance. And after that, all this data from all these storage nodes with different retention periods can be queried from a single select node, a single set of select nodes, or you can create multiple sets of select nodes with different hardware capabilities for different purposes. For instance, some select nodes with a small number of CPU cores and memory for lightweight queries, and some a set of select nodes with 100 CPU cores per each node, with terabytes of memory per each node for some type of analytics queries, which usually heavy and need to crunch terabytes of data. And that's okay. You can make anything you want with VictoriaMetrics cluster.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So far, I don't see more questions, but I have a personal question.
We missed some questions in the beginning, and that was a question from Magali. Hey, any plans to make a new component that could replace surpass proxy? That would be a good work. So are we going to replace proxy or add some alternatives from our side?
We already provide some alternative for proxy for cluster version of VictoriaMetrics. This is named a multi-level VM select. You can set up a VM select to query other VM selects, which are located in different VictoriaMetrics clusters, for instance. And in such setup, you automatically replace proxy functionality on top level with top level VM select. And there are plans to add the ability to query a single node versions of VictoriaMetrics from VM select. And in this case, you can replace proxy for single node versions also.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Also, there was question from Grigori about what our plans for VictoriaLogs. Do we want to cover these topics one more time, or just what is roadmap? Roadmap. That's roadmap.
That's a hard question. We are going to implement the first version of VictoriaLogs in the next coming months, in the next few months. And our requirements are the first requirement for this system is that it should be efficient for storing this data. This means that it should compress the incoming logs more efficiently compared to existing solutions. Because when you ingest big amounts of logs, you end up with big amounts of data stored on disks, and you end up with high costs for storing this data. So we our primary focus will be to reduce the storage space for this login data, and the next main focus is to simplify querying this data for typical use cases for logs. And the first typical use case, the most typical use case, is to investigate some production issue around some time frame when something went wrong. And usually in this case, you need to investigate logs around this time frame across different systems in distributed system. And this use case should be covered the best from VictoriaLogs. And the third requirement which we want to achieve sometimes is to provide good query language for statistics calculation on top of logs. This means you should be able to extract different parts of logs, convert these parts to some numerics, for instance, durations, convert to durations, IP addresses, convert to real IP addresses, and then calculate the number of unique IP addresses or histogram distribution across different request durations. And the query language which will be provided by VictoriaLogs should be able to provide this functionality, and this functionality should be easy to use from user perspective. So these are the three main requirements for VictoriaLogs right now.
Okay, so is there any like a ready language for that, or you're thinking about creating a new one?
That's secret. We didn't decide yet. As I mentioned, this language, the main requirement for this language is that it should be simple enough for average user, because we are not satisfied with query languages for existing login systems such as Loki or Elasticsearch, and so we didn't decide yet, but this query language should be simple. Probably later we will add some compatibilities with existing query languages, such as LokiQL, but that's not a requirement right now, because we do believe that LokiQL isn't simple language for logs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There is also a question about implementation of private links in managed solution from Grigori. So how it calls many private links aggregated in one VPC, and I believe it's most like are we going to implement private links? And Max, do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly right. Multiple VPC links will be aggregated into one VPC. it doesn't mean that they will go into same load balancer, but it definitely will be one VPC. Yeah. At least at the beginning.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. In terms of questions that we got, I believe that's it. If we miss anything, just let us know. Just ping in chat, and yeah, and that's it. So, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to listening to us. Thank you so much for your questions. That was awesome from my side. Definitely, if you see any areas to improve, just let us know. Feel free to drop line in every public community. We are all here, so and we definitely will appreciate every word. Special critic, because from my side, I like when people tell me how to improve the things, and that's definitely useful. About these sessions, we are plan to do more, so follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, other platforms where we YouTube, where we just send and tell you about our future plans and notification about next events. Okay, I believe that is, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, whole team. Thank you, all people who contributed into features, bugs, presentations, meetups, and all other activities. So, see you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Bye.